This is Klank Dialosa, and we are about to discuss some metal and some new wave. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Discuss Metal Podcast with Klank Dialosa of Klank. Hosted by Dan Terry, presented by discussmetal.com.
It's giving people an outlet, especially since they're talking about there might not be any shows till at least 2021 right now. I was watching things the other day because like Live Nation, and they were like, things are very bleak right now. And people say, well, we just can't wait till this is over. And they said, well, when it's over, things might not go back to exactly the way it was, at least even with live music, because people are still going to be concerned about having such large groups. And you know what's going to happen. People are going to be so starved to be out like in a club or a bar that it's going to be just like China now when they said, okay, everybody can be released. And it was like, yeah, mass influx, everybody everywhere, It could be a good thing for music because maybe it'll be like the Roaring 20s or whatever it was after the last big craziness where that's where we had, a jazz explosion and all this stuff. This could be something that it sucks now, but it might end up leading to some kind of, musical or cultural revolution of some kind. Nobody knows. We don't know what to expect.
It's going to be a really interesting year. I know I'm a little bummed out. There was the big Furnace Fest that was, technically still on, but I don't think is still on. A lot of my favorite bands growing up some of them were reuniting just to play that festival. And when I was talking to Jeff from Zayo the other day, he was like, yeah, I got in my car to drive to this concert that we were supposed to play. And he's like, I don't even know if I want to get in my car and go because I don't know if it's going to get canceled before I get there, Yeah, it's been terrifying. Now, I've been working every day, but, but most everybody else that I talk to, they've either been at home or they're, at a place where they can, I guess, continue to work. I don't know how all the shelter in place stuff works.
Yeah. Well, here they closed all the beaches, all the parks. A block and a half down the road, there's a nice big dog park. It's a regular park with a track and a baseball field. It's connected to a school, and people meet there with dogs all the time. So I walk my dog down there at least 4 times a day, and a lot of times we go to the beach. I put up videos and stuff at the beach, and it's been really weird now because I'll go to walk past there, and Ellie will pull the leash, and I'm like, no, you can't go in there because all the signs says barricades and all this, and
Right.
One of the neighbors was telling me, I know you come here all the time. You better watch out. Don't come in now because it's $1,000 fine. If they see you on the street, it's $1,000 fine. And now, like, even in Los Angeles, if they see you without a face mask on, it's $1,000 fine. So it's like, some people saying, oh, this is getting crazy. It's getting obsessive. I'm like, but at the same point, everybody's usual routine has been disrupted. I've been distancing myself from people for years.
For
me, I'm like, I'm at the apartment complex. My job, they said mandatory stuff like, if a tenant gets locked out or something happens, there's an emergency, a clogged sink, a clogged toilet or something, an emergency. That's the deal. But otherwise, everything else is on hold until this, shelter in place is lifted. So, of course, I've got this list that's starting to grow and grow and grow.
Right.
Which at least it's not big stuff, but it's just weird because it's like, some people complaining, I don't understand. I can't be trapped at home. I can't do this. I can't do that. It's too much for me. And I get that because there's some people there's people with social anxiety. And then there's people that are like, they can't be alone too much. They have issues with it. So I can see both sides of that. It's just kind of weird because everything has just changed so much that you can't even, like I said, your normalcy is out the window. We're waiting to find out what the new normal is. We have what our temporary new normal is now, like the people that are working from home or the people that their jobs shut down. And so they're just kind of like, like, what do I do all day? Especially if you don't have kids to entertain and to keep busy and stuff. You're like, I know people that are like, I can't possibly sanitize my house enough, like anymore. They're like, I've already bleached everything. I've cleaned everything. And they're like, they're at the point where they're repeating stuff because they're out of stuff to do.
Right.
It's like just wear a mask, come over to my place and wash the floor. I won't complain.
Right. Well, that's the thing. For me, especially coming home from work every day, I have to basically come in and shower and, like immediately before I do anything. Cause I don't know. Cause I work on oxygen machines. So like, I don't think I'm working on the machines that have been used by people that have the virus, but there's still a fear there that I'm going to, bring something home.
Because you don't know if somebody that came in contact with that could just be a carrier. They could be asymptomatic. They're the cruise ship. The passenger, they're not going on the cruise. They're the ship itself. So it's kind of like weird.
Yeah.
Because everybody's hypersensitive, and I get it because you have to be really careful. I mean, nobody wants to get sick and die, but at the same point, it's like, I had 4 family members going through this these past 3 weeks. My nephew is a cop in Manhattan. He's a sergeant in the courts. He caught it. He brought it into my brother's house. So it was like my nephew had it. He's just now getting over it. He's at like 98%. He's still got this really weird, he was describing this fatigue that comes with it. He's like, I feel great, but I can't do a lot because he's like, I feel run down. Like I just did like crazy yard work or all kinds of exercises and I'm just beat up. And my brother is just coming out of the thick of it. My one cousin, Lance, is in the middle of the thick of it now. And a cousin who we didn't even know we had up until about a year and a half ago, which our family just found out about. He's a little older. He's in the hospital. His breathing is compromised. So, it's crazy because that's a big chunk of people, that I know off the bat. And then it's like, I came to find out last night that my nephew, the one who first got it and infected the house, his girlfriend ended up getting it from him. And my sister-in-law's sister, who was her husband died 3 weeks ago of cancer. They don't have kids or whatever. And she was like, I can't go back to that big empty house. Can I just stay here? So my sister-in-law and my brother were like, yeah, sure. She was there 3 days. On the third day, that's when my nephew got rushed to the hospital. And then when he came home, they said, I most likely have the virus. Now I'm waiting for a test. They said, anybody that's in the house now, stay for 14 days. Don't leave just in case. Because he's like, if I am a carrier, we need to kick this out. She went through all this. She just went home to her house 2 days ago, and she's now showing all the symptoms that everybody in the house had. So that's the 6th person. And I'm like, oh my God. It's like, it's crazy. And like you said, you come home and the last thing you want to do is drape something in the house. It's almost like in the sci-fi movies, like Alien and stuff. You need to go the decompression chamber where they, blast you with the spray.
Yeah, I was thinking John Carpenter's The Thing. That was I watched that a few nights ago, and I was like, man, this is kind of what people act like. This is kind of what people are starting to act like now. It's a guy at work sneezes because the machines that we have are dusty.
Yes.
So we wear masks and gloves and everything while we're working for sure. But every now and again a little dust will get in there, and somebody will sneeze, and everybody gets real quiet.
All eyes are on that person like, whoa.
Yeah. And then we just joke around now. We all just say, nope, it ain't the Ronas,
Yeah.
But
I shared a meme thing. I think it was on Instagram earlier, and it was like, something about like the same thing, like all of a sudden you get a fever and that little bit of a cough, and you're just like, this is it. I'm preparing for the end. This is how I die,
Yeah. Well, it felt so weird. I did an interview recently with Luke Easter, and I just signed in for like 2 minutes, and I was like sneezing and coughing, but it's allergies because it was the spring had just kicked in, and so I'm like sneezing and all that, and he just kind of looks at me. He's like, "You good?" I was like, "I'm good. I'm good." He's like, "Okay."
Yeah, not dead yet.
Yeah. He told me to tell you hi, by the way.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
What's funny with the allergies, dude? Like even Pat from Klank, like I was texting because we have a group chat. I was texting with him just before I got on because he's been dying the last 2 weeks. It's like he runs the computer department at the college, like San Jose State or whatever it is. So he's been dealing with leaving the house, and I'll text him, "Hey, dude, how's it going today?" My eyes are killing me. My eyes, scratchy, itchy, the scratchy throat. And then it was like, at first it was like, oh man, are you getting sick? Are you getting sick? And then it was like more and more people. And it was like, we can't just deal with allergy season. Now it's like allergy season mixed in with the normal flu season with the wacky weather, which is 40 degrees one day, 78 degrees the next day, 32 degrees the one day, like 50 something degrees the next day, and the virus on top. So it's almost like trying to decipher what category the sneeze falls in, the scratchy throat falls in. It's like, it's like that whole never Google what your symptoms are because you're as good as dead.
Yeah, it will tell you that you will die from the sniffles that you have. Yeah.
Right. Your estimated time left on this planet is ... And you're like writing on a wheel and stuff.
Right. Starts a little timer there in the corner of the page.
Yeah, the little egg shaker, the egg timer is slowly counting down. Oh man.
So with all the time and everything, and that's how I've just been banging out these interviews lately, just because I'm like, well, who do I want to talk to? Because everyone's available, and and that's I guess my question that I had for you is, are you doing have you guys been working? I know you guys are pretty much always working on music. Have you guys used any of this extra time to work on stuff? I know you guys were doing it remotely for a while, but now you guys are local to each other, isn't that right?
Yes, because when I was in Texas, we were using my Mac is synced with Pat's computer. We have the software that's like, I think it's Source Nexus, where he can basically go in, because I'm same as you, like, I'm not an engineer. Pat has always been the guy I go, I'm hearing this in my head, and I'll describe it to him, and he clicks and drags, and he's the engineer, he's the tech guru in our camp. So for the longest time, it was like, we still need to be able to work. He would just control everything on my end. Since relocating back to California, I've gotten a little more savvy, thanks to him, figuring out some stuff. I usually do weekends at his house, either Friday or Saturday. But now since the quarantine hit, too, it was like, because even there's a curfew here, so it's not even like I'll say, screw it, I'll just go. Right. I want to be driving back to the studio because I don't usually get back till 3 or 4 in the morning. Last thing I want to do is get arrested and get my car impounded and then take my dog, all because I was hanging out at the studio.
Sure.
So what we've been doing is working remotely. It's funny because he's only 45 minutes away, and because I'm in Santa Cruz and he's in San Jose. But even now, still, it's like, okay, well, we have the ability to work remotely. We've been working on stuff before the quarantine, and because originally we were going to do a remix EP, and then that remix EP, we were like, we'll throw a couple of originals, couple of remixes, maybe a cover song. And then it was, let's just keep writing and see if we get maybe 4 to 6 originals.
Sure.
To put on here. And then, like saying you got to strike while the iron is hot. So we were like, we kept, the creativity was going, man. Like the juices were flowing. So we were like, you know what? Instead of going, okay, well, we have 8 songs, let's stop. We were like, you know what? Screw this. Let's just keep going and see where it takes us. And I'm glad we've been doing that, because now it's like we've got 12 or 13 originals where basically everything is done. And it's so funny to say it. Everything is pretty much done except for the drums, because the way it worked out on this one is Pat and I have been able to do a lot of the pre-production and stuff, and he programmed everything out and have it. And then it was like, okay, well, now we got to work it out with the drummer, because the drummer's in culinary school right now. So his schedule is a little wonky. And especially now with this on top of it, because he doesn't drive. So it's been a little harder. So we were like, you know what? Him and I have been like, hey, you know what? Let's just keep working on stuff, keep working on our remixes, and just keep, the drop box is synced between the 2 computers. So we've been like, just keep adding to it. So now we've been mixing stuff, sending MP3s back and forth. And then he'll be like, oh, I came up with this little idea. What do you think of this? And I go, oh man, all of a sudden, like, because if I hear something, sometimes it'll trigger a melody, or I'll go, I can hear a drum or a guitar over this. But it's been like every time we're sending something to each other, it's been extremely fruitful and positive. So we've been like, you know what? We're still mixing the songs that we have done, but we're still adding to, what we call our stockpile. So it's funny now, because like when you open up the Klank folder in Dropbox, it's like there's bits, fragments, complete sketches, pre-production sketches, newest ideas. There's so many things that we were like, okay, at some point we're going to have to kind of reel it in a little,
yeah,
but at the same point, like I said, when you got that creative juices going, it's like anything else. You want to keep going and you want to, as long as you're still being fruitful. And it's like, so we've been kind of double dipping. We're like, okay, we're going to mix simultaneously at the same time. We're still kicking new ideas around. And even in the middle of all this, we had a couple people reach out about collaborating. We talked to some people. There's, one person in particular I was talking to for the last couple of years. I'm like, we should really do something. I really dig your music. And this person was, I dig your music. Still Suffering was one of my favorite albums growing up. So it was kind of like, all right, see what happens. So we've been kind of in this limbo of, all right, well, when I finish up what I'm working, this is him, when I finish up what I'm working on, I'll see about getting with you and Pat and working on something. I put up a couple of random things on like Instagram and stuff, just working on beats and stuff. And it was funny. The next morning, this guy was like, hey, dude, that thing you put up last night, he goes, what are you doing with that? He goes, because if you're not doing anything, I got a great idea. Let's use that as a start for the collaboration. And I was like, bing, all right. So
perfect.
I sent it to him. I sent him an MP3. Like a day and a half later, I get the text message, check your email. I just sent you something. And it was like essentially a song sketch.
Yeah.
He's like, this is what I have. I'm hearing this. You and Pat, this part here, this part here. This part is completely open canvas. Do what you guys do here. Send me something back and let's see. So we spent the last week or so sending stuff back and forth. And the last thing that came through, Pat finalized ideas he was working on, sent it to him, and then he sent us just two or 3 days ago, here's a most recent update of what we have. And I was like listening to it, and I was like, man, dude, I said, we have so much going on simultaneously that it was awesome that in the midst of, the Klank stuff, the remix stuff, the little bit of side project stuff, because we're still, he's working on something, I'm working on something, we're working on something together. It was like all this creativity at the same point. And then on top, the cherry on top of all this other stuff we've been doing was this MP3 idea floating back and forth between us and this other guy. And he was like, and I think he's mixing that other song is getting mixed. I think if it didn't get mixed this, like today and tomorrow, it's going to be mixed by the end of the week. So I'm kind of like, I'm stoked, because it's like, this has been a great chance to be creative. I mean, no matter what you do, whether it's, drawing, graphic arts, even in your case, specifically, you're like, a lot of people at home, availability is at its highest right now. So, like you said, get the interviews, get with people. And it's good to see a lot of people utilizing the time to be creative, even if it's just something simple like throwing a 3-minute video on Facebook or Instagram singing or whatever. Or like I've seen a lot of people who never play guitar, or I know they're musicians, but they don't push a lot of that stuff on their social media for whatever reason. And I'm seeing like more and more, I just took 3 inches of dust off my guitar and I'm going to play a song. And it's kind of like, it's really cool to see people kind of coming out of their shells and just being, using this opportunity to be creative in one way or another, So it's great to see.
Well, yeah, yourself, even, I've seen every now and again, I'll look down at Facebook or Instagram or something, and you're up there with an acoustic guitar playing a song I either haven't heard in 100 years or something else.
Exactly. I was like the other day with Adobe Gray, give me the beat, boys, and free my dog. I've always loved that song. And I was just like sitting in the gym with the dog, just messing around, playing it in the background. Hey, you know what? I'm just singing it. Because normally, dude, I'm so self-conscious. Like, yeah, I'm a musician and all that. But we go into the studio. If it takes 747 takes to get it perfect, that's what it is.
So be it.
The final product is, ta-da, it's perfect. Here it is. When you're doing live or you're just like, I'll just throw this up here. Instagram gives me 15 seconds in my stories. Let's see what I can, and it's a crapshoot. Sometimes I really like it. Sometimes I second guess and I go, I'm not going to put this up. For the 4 or 5 things I put up, there's about 20 things that are just sitting on my phone going, I don't know. I'm too self-conscious. And people go, just put it out. And I'm like, getting a little better with that. But at the same point, there's the pride aspect. There's I know me. I wouldn't release this on an album like this because there's that one note that I'm like, oh, this is perfect, except for that one note where I'm totally flat. And that'll be one of those things, dude. It'll be like a thorn under, like a bamboo shoot under my fingernail. It'll piss me off. It'll irritate me, and I'm like, I can't live with that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it was pretty impressive when I saw that with that death therapy live. I mean, that was one of the most incredible things I'd ever seen in my life. And it wasn't like a trick. Like it was the real deal. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't live as far as they each recorded their parts.
Right.
And sent it. I mean, because to do the actual 4 people in a different spot, you need like a good $2,500 program, if not more. That's just the basics, because if you really want, but I really like what Jason did. He was like, hey man, we recorded our parts. They did 3 songs. I watched it earlier and I was like, it sounded great. And yes, it's not live as in they were all performing simultaneously, but for all those people that are not getting the death therapy or have never seen them before, or this gave a chance for, the people who are fans to appreciate it. The people who might have heard of them or heard of his old band, said, I'm new to some of this. It's given a chance for more people, to see that and see what they do and how they do it. And I don't want to say a plus or a flip side of the shelter in place and all that, but because it's really easy to point out negatives. No matter what, your brain will automatically go to the negative first. But when you flip the script on it, you're like, you know what? People are being more creative. They're encouraging people to reach out to others more. I mean, I talk to my family pretty regularly, but we have a new family group chat, and every morning everybody's in it. We video chat we're more connected now, and all because of this. So at the end of the day, yeah, this sucks, and it's an inconvenience. It's hurting people's wallets. It's making some people go stir crazy. But at the end of the day, we've been so like this, preoccupied with our tunnel vision of this is what's on my phone, that now I didn't do that. That's weird. But yeah, so it's good because it's forcing people to be more connected. And even though people are spending a lot of time on their phone, because you're going to be video chatting more and all that, but at the same point, it's forcing people to reach out to others like, oh, hey, I haven't talked to so-and-so in a while. Actually, I'm usually pretty good about that. If I get a weird, like wild hair in my butt, like somebody popped up in my brain, and especially if they pop up more than once in a couple of days, I'm like, to me, this is a sign. Like, I need to reach out to this person. And usually I'll just be like, yo, bro, what's happening? Haven't talked to you in a while. You're on my mind. Just wanted to say, hey. And 9 times out of 10, I get wow, dude, I've been having a really, really rough time. Your text could not have came in at a better time, because I've been feeling completely, even before this coronavirus thing, was like, I've been feeling very isolated. I'm not talking to a lot of people. I'm having a really rough time. So it's just weird how something that, if you just popped in your head, I haven't talked to Klank in a while, I'm just going to text him and bust his balls. It's like, you never know. I could be in the middle of something where I'm like, oh, dude, you know what? This is like a sign of life. Thank you.
For sure.
You never know, and it's good to see more people reaching out, more people being connected. And I think once temporary new normal that we're experiencing now is over, and we go, I don't want to say go back to our lives, because we're going to go back, but I think it's going to be an altered, you know what I'm saying? I think our old normal is going to be a new normal in some senses, but it's good to see that, more people have been staying in touch and keeping tabs on each other, especially because if there's a lot of people that struggle, that can't take the solitude, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Being like shut-ins. There's been an uptick in, people with mental illness stressing out. There was, I was reading a thing last week about one guy, I think it was in New Jersey or something, and he basically has problems being alone, being separated from people, and he ended up killing himself. And it was really sad, but at the same point, it's like, this is unprecedented these times. I would have never thought would you ever thought that you'd be sheltered in your house? Especially reading like social studies or whatever, like in school, your flus and influenzas and bubonic plagues, and you're like, oh, thank God none of that is these days. That was the dark ages, And ta-da, here we are, and we're going through the same crap,
Yeah, and the most terrifying part about it is that, like, you'd think that, well, it's because we've advanced, we've figured out how to yada 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 yada, we figured out all these preventative methods and all this stuff or whatever, but then it turned out that all the preventative methods, all that stuff, it just didn't mean jack squat. I guess it is kind of like a silver lining, just seeing how much people actually care about each other, because for a while we were worried about that.
Well, yeah, because humanity has a tendency to suck in a lot of ways, because you see the things that people do to each other. It's one thing if you're doing something and you don't realize you're hurting somebody in one way or another. But in our society, we love to hurt people. We throw them under the bus and back up, move forward and back up as fast as we can, just because that seems to be the nature for a while. And it's good to see now, like, people looking out for their elderly neighbors, or going, doing shopping for those who can't really get out, who are, here, I have some tenants here that are like 80 plus years old. So they have breathing problems. They can't be out. And I'll hit them up. Hey, look, I'm running to the store. Do you need anything? Or if I come back with an overabundance of stuff, because my church gets, donations for a homeless ministry. So sometimes I got full plates of food that they have a day to go. Otherwise they're going to expire. And it's like, so I'll go to like the elderly people, like people across and stuff, and I'll say, hey, I got, baked potatoes and chicken and all kinds of stuff. Are you hungry? Oh my goodness, I was wondering what I was going to do to eat for the next couple of days. This is great. And it's like, hey, it's like you said, though, it's good to see more people caring in general, and not, the silver lining. It's so weird to say stuff like that, but it's true. The flip side of it is, even there's all the bad stuff, but it's showing, more unity, more people for the most part, more people are banding together, more people are looking out, and especially it's cool. Like, especially if you have a random person you haven't talked to in a while, drop you that, the text or the call or the video message. It's like, oh man, I appreciate you looking in. There's been a couple of people I hadn't spoke to in a couple of years that just, hey man, I happen to see you come in my news feed, my scroll down, and I was like, let me see what this cat's up to right now. So, I'm like, that's cool. That's what we're all about right now, and that's what we should be anyway.
Well, and on that a little bit, I was feeling kind of bad, because I was like, man, the last time I had you on the show was 2 years ago. You're in a different state. You're in I mean, we've talked since then on Messenger and stuff, but like it's definitely been one of those things where, I always feel horrible after a while, because I'm just like, how are these people doing? But then I'm so caught up in my own life, all this stuff that I'm doing, all the things that I have going on, for whatever reason, is, takes precedence, I guess. And, in my mind.
Well, because life gets in the way. That's what I would say. So, I meant to call you, but sorry, life gets in the way. And sometimes, life is like a steamroller. It doesn't really slow down. Sometimes it just keeps picking up speed, and it's like, you got to go with the flow,
Well, and on that topic, I guess one of the things I just wanted to ask, and I apologize to the listeners if you wanted us to have a hardcore discussion on music. We did that already 2 years ago. you guys can go listen to it. It sounded a lot better than this, because Joe was engineering it, but
And we can always talk again when the albums are out, so we'll give people more down the road.
Absolutely. But yeah, one of the things I guess I was just wondering is you had just, when I touched base with you, I guess it was 2 years ago. It might have been 3. It's hard for me to even think, because I remember telling Joe, I was like, oh yeah, we talked to Klank like 8 months ago, and he's like, no.
No, I think
he's like, no, it's 2 years ago.
That was in the first couple of months I was in Texas, if I remember correctly, because it was also pretty much right on the heels of my separation with my wife. So it was, talking about a different state. Yeah, I was in a different state physically and mentally. It wasn't a good place. It wasn't the best spot, but things are better now, so, and it's crazy because that's 2 years. Like you said, it's like you blinked, and I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, it hasn't really been that long. And I'm like, no, actually, it's been a minute.
I know. I feel bad I didn't grow my beard out before we did it, because now I'm feeling, I just shaved 5 days ago, because I have sleep apnea, and I can't, I have to wear a mask on my face whenever I sleep, and with the beard, I just can't do it, And I had to get rid of it.
I'll make up for the both of us. I'll compensate for us both right now.
Well, I almost made a joke earlier where they're like, yeah, and if they see you out with a mask, I'm like, yeah, but at what point does it stop being a beard and it's just your own built-in mask? I mean, that's got to be a better filtration system than anything else, right?
Yeah. I'd rather breathe through my own hair than a piece of cotton, but it might sound weird to some people. At least I know it's mine.
Right. No, I totally get it. But one of the things, too, to bring it a little bit back into music is you released, before all this stuff went down, you had just released some free music.
Yes, January 1st, to be exact. We released a 2-song EP, brand new Klank. We decided this is the thing, too. We've been working on this music for like 3 years. Pat and I had talked, and we were like, you know what? We need to kick off the new year with something new. I mean, within the last 2 years, it's funny, too, because we released new music within the last 2 years, but they were both soundtracks for movies. And the funny thing is, we were in the middle of working on the songs that we're still working on now, but like our friend Bruce was like, hey, got this soundtrack, this movie on, metal music and this and that. I was like, all right, well, okay, more than happy to do it for you. Put our normal stuff on hold, do this. And then he was like, hey, I'm doing this documentary on mental health and the music industry and musicians and how they're affected by it. I just wanted to throw out some feelers and see if you guys would be interested in, and I was like, stop right there. Yes.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Plus Bruce is a childhood friend of mine. So it was like anything for Bruce, so it was like, so we were kind of like, oh man, we haven't put out any new music in a while. And then we were like, well, actually, we have 2 full albums worth. There's no vocals because it's all instrumentals, but it's still technically 2 releases. So that's why we were like, you know what that song, the Keyboard Commandos, was basically the first one that was kind of finished, where we were like, yeah, this one's done. Like, Pat was like, all right, mix it, set it, put it on the shelf with the rest, and when we're ready, it'll go out. And then we were like, you know what? Let's give the people something now. Let's start off 2020. It's funny. We were thinking, let's start off 2020 on a good foot and set a good precedent for the rest of the year. Now, musically, that's happened. Everything else kind of went to hell in a handbasket. But so we were like, we did 2 songs. One is Keyboard Commandos, which is obviously about trolls and, keyboard warriors. And then the other song is a song that Doug Pinnick had contacted us a couple of years back and said, hey, I've got, my solo album and I want a remix. I want something that's, bouncy and disco. And I want, he was just basically describing what he was hearing. He sent us the stems and said, well, okay, do what you guys do, and sent it back to him. And then he loved it. And then when we were talking about putting out the remix album, I hit him up and I said, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to have some originals and remixes. I said, do you care if we put the remix on there? And he said, no, go ahead. So we were trying to get things together for New Year's, and Pat was like, dude, let's just make it real simple. Let's put out one brand new one remix. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds, because it's still, it's Doug Pinnick. We're not worthy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it was like, so we did that. And it was good because we got good response from it, good feedback. And so we figured, a couple of months down the road, we'll try to, reel in the reins a little bit on the remix EP. And like I said, that's changed a little bit now. We're going to do a full length first and then the remixes. And the remixes are still going to end up in a 2-volume set.
Okay.
This is how crazy our life is, because we might plan something out, but, you never know what's going to happen. Songs we might think a song is done, and then we'll go back and listen to something, and not until it's mastered, nothing is ever done. Nothing is ever finalized. Once it's mastered, that's it. That's a wrap. But we were like, let's put this out, and then we were just talking like a couple of weeks ago, trying to finalize the mixing for X amount of the songs we have now. We already have our artwork guy, Anthony, working on the cover. So it's like, okay, we're collectively working towards this. We still don't have a time frame yet, because the coronavirus, shelter in place, threw us for a loop, because, like I said, every weekend, Ellie and I were camping out at Pat's mixing. So it was like, okay, well, luckily in our situation, we don't have to just put everything on pause. Now, at least we can work remotely. And it's, it's kind of like what we were doing when I was in Texas, but at least it's a closer proximity. And now we have so much more. We did a bunch of remixes. We have remixes that there's a couple of people who are friends of ours that we asked, mutual respect for each other's work. So we said, hey, you'd be interested in this? Absolutely. So we sent some stuff back and forth. So now once we rope in the release of all original music, right behind it, at least volume 1 will come out right away. And within a few months, the second volume will come out. On the heels of that, Pat and I have our electronic synth pop project. We call it Synth Pop Lullaby, where it's kind of like God Lives Underwater meets Depeche Mode.
Oh, my goodness.
There's no heavy. There is no guitar, no heavy guitars, no distortion, dude. It's all sweet, sweet analog synths, old school keyboards, melodies. And it's cool because I kind of wanted to break out of the box because people know me from Klank, my work with Circle of Dust, and any guest appearances I've done, for Argyle Park and stuff. So most people only know the heavy and they only know the slightly lighter songs. So we were like, you know what? We like to experiment with a little bit of everything. So the synth pop lullaby stuff it's cool because it's electronic, but it doesn't sound like Klank. The vocals definitely don't sound like Klank. I'm being a lot more, I don't want to say taking risks, but in a way taking risks because I'm trying more vocal harmonies. I'm trying more things. And I'm, relying more on Pat as a producer. Like, hey, dude, because normally what happens is if I get an idea for a song and we go in there to record vocals, I go, I'm going to talk to you and tell you what I'm hearing in my head. Let's do a quick run through. I'll sing it along and I'll accent, this is where I want this. This is where I want this. And we get done with everything. And Pat will be like, this is great. Try another harmony here. Have you tried doubling this? Let's put one in the center and 2 higher harmonies. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we've been able to be a bit more creative, work out of our box. And dude, some of the stuff is like, I'm just really digging it because it's a departure from Klank. If you put it on going, it's going to be heavy, you're not going to get that. But I think you're going to be just as satisfied because it's, the members of Klank, but it's a different expression. It's a different mood. And, because there's music and a soundtrack for every feeling and every emotion, You don't have to be just into heavy music or electronic music. And I get into that with people all the time. You need to just do heavy. I like to just hear the death metal sides. And then you have the other people. I like it when you sing cleaner. And I'm like, there's you as an artist where you want to get across what you want to get across. And you want to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Like honest to yourself as a musician. But you also have to, it's really weird, especially once you have more than one album out. Like you put out your one album and then people have their preconceived notions. And then you're hearing about the expectations you have to live up to on the second one or the third one. Or they go, this is awesome, but this isn't Still Suffering. Well, that's because Still Suffering was friggin' 1996.
Yeah, but I mean, even Still Suffering wasn't just straight death metal,
Exactly. And that's the thing, it's the variety, and that's what we try to give people now. But at the same point, too, it's like the last couple of Klank records, like Urban Warfare, and even with Rise, I did a lot more with the vocal harmonies, and I was just feeling a lot more comfortable with myself as a singer and as a musician. And that's one of the joys of the working relationship that Pat and I have is, he's been one of my best friends for like 25, 27 years, something like that. So it's like, we anticipate what each other are going to do and say in a sense. That's why, like, when I say, hey, this is what I'm hearing, people are like, oh, you mean something like this? Click, click, drag, click, click. He moves the mouse around. And 9 times out of 10, I'm just like, I can just sit back and go, there it is. There it is. Like he was looking in my friggin' head, So yeah, I'm stoked. I'm stoked on the new stuff. I'm stoked on, the Klank stuff, the synth pop lullaby stuff. I said last year I was going to get off my butt and release at least one solo song, a Klank Dialosa song. It's funny because I have a bunch of stuff demoed. I have some stuff demoed that I've had demoed since 1997 that no one's ever heard. It's just sitting on a dusty hard drive in the back. But I was like, I'm going to get to these things eventually. And I think, especially more now with what's going on, it's making me, I've been going through old folders and stuff more, coming across old stuff. And because some stuff, if I can bounce back to the new Klank that's coming out, right after Still Suffering came out, Pat and I were both living in New York. I was living in Farmingdale. He was living in Lindenhurst. One day I was in the shower, and I had this synth line, this bass line was just playing over and over in my head. I'm washing my hair or whatever, and I'm like, I got out of the shower, and I called him, and I said, "Oh, dude," I was like, "I just got out of the shower. I've got this thing in my head, and it's like, it's an earworm. It's killing me. Can I come over?" Yeah. Come on over. So I dried up, went over there. As soon as I got there, he had like an old Korg Triton, and he laid it out. Dude, we're talking 1997. So he laid out the synth bass, and we threw down some quick guitars, and that was 1997. Since then, I've tried, I don't even know how many umpteen times of vocal melodies, lyrics. Everything I tried, I was not happy with. I was like, man, this song has a killer beat. I like the vibe. It's very Still Suffering-esque. It's very also like more, I call it like raw industrial, if that makes sense. But, and the kicker is, just before I left the end of September 2017 to move to Texas, we were working on stuff. And originally we were like, okay, when you get to Texas, within 6 months, boom, the album will be done and we're going to put it out. Didn't work out that way. One of the things he did was he was like going through his hard drives, and he goes, "Oh man, look at what I came across." He goes, "Remember this one?" He goes, "It's really a shame you never came up with anything for this lyrically, because I really like the song." And we both sat there and had that total like, "Aw," like that fond moment. Like, I remember this. This is cool. He made an MP3, sent it to me. I downloaded it at the house. And then that night I was still living at the top of the mountain at this point. So I had like an hour plus drive. So I'm driving up the mountain and I'm listening to this. And all of a sudden, the hamster wheels start spinning in my head, and the lyrics start shooting. So I pull over at the scenic overlook, and I'm going through my glove box, jotting down on back of my insurance card because I have nothing else to write with, and then it was like, so I'm going to make my way back up the mountain, and I'm singing along with what I got. And I get just about to the top again, and I'm like, I can't lose this. I can't lose it. Pull over in somebody's driveway. And I end up writing the rest of the song lyrically. So now it's like, I get back to his house, and at this point, I'm just like bonkers, like excited. I'm like, dude, it's done. And he goes, "What's done?" I'm like, "That song." "What song?" I go, "You remember the one that was just marked like, Klank 1? I think it was just a Klank Dancy 1. And he goes, yeah. The one I just made a copy of. I'm like, "It's done. I got lyrics for it." He goes, "No way." I'm like, "Whenever you're available, let me know and I'll come over." So, and ironically, I think it was like 2 days later, and it was midweek too, because we didn't do many midweeks just because we all had to work, and I was usually getting up at like 4:30 in the morning. I went to his house, and same thing. I said, "All right, you hit play, and I'm going to read off to you what I'm hearing in my head." We go through everything. We did the song, the run through, and I said, "All right, blow this out with distortion. I want the verses to have heavy distortion, and then, more distortion, whatever, on the choruses." And dude, by the time it got done, like, he spins around in his chair and he looks at me and he goes, "So why the hell did that take you 20-something years to get that off?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know, and now it's funny because even when I listen to it now, I'm like, I can't help but smile, because it's like you have something that it sat for so long, and that's why we never really throw anything away. Like, even if there's a part I don't like or he don't like, we go, I'm not feeling it right now, but we don't delete it. It just gets put on the shelf with everything else, and you never know. It's at a later date, it might work out. And it's just funny because I love that song so much, and it turned out to be a song that we've now called Apologies. And it's basically about, as you get older, the idea is to get hopefully smarter and wiser and, learn from your mistakes. That's the dream, to learn as we go. But so for me too, it was like, my lyrics, they're very, very real and lifelike. So it was like, I can only write about what I feel. So I was basically writing out like a formal apology for things I've done in the past, people I've hurt. There was, things that you do, you don't realize sometimes the repercussions that your actions will have, whether you mean to be a jerk to somebody or not, or even if you're not being a jerk, even if You know what I'm saying? You can just help somebody with something because you're being a nice guy, and that little bit of you helping somebody else could affect them so majorly because they're like, oh my God, I was struggling or whatever. So this song took on a form of its own, and now listening to it, kicking back and like listening to it, it brings a smile to my face. And go, man, after all these years and after everything, it all ended up coming full circle. And I think lyrically too, it's one of the most open and raw. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like an exposed nerve. It's exactly what you're feeling, but straight there in song. And I love when those kind of things work out. Those happy accidents. That's what we've always called them.
Like Bob Ross. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Seriously. Next thing you know, you got this happy little tree in the middle of nowhere, and it totally makes the painting and sets. And that's kind of like the same thing with some of the music. You have something you think you might be kind of cool, or let's mess with this, and then by the time you get through it and you get to the end of, all right, I did this, I did that, double this, let's put some effect here, and then when you sit back and you cross your arms and you're listening to it, it's like sometimes it's so satisfying to get that feeling of accomplishment, like especially like in the song Apologies, because it sat since like I said, 1997. After all these years, it was like not like a pat on myself on the shoulder, but it was like, man, dude, this, after sitting so long, I'm so glad that I didn't rush and put other lyrics that I wasn't as happy with, because there's been 7 or 8 different themes lyrically, and I was not feeling it, and I was like, I don't like being beat by something. I can be really competitive with some things, and if something's getting the best of me, dude, it's going to irritate the piss out of me. Like, wow, I can't let this win. I can't let it win. But with this song, yeah, it was getting the best of me for a while, and it sat. But now it's like, I think it's the best. You know what I'm saying? I don't think there could be a better representation of what it is now. And I'm glad that we didn't get rid of it and we sat on it, And I told people, it's like fine wine. It's not to be served before it's time. It's gotta really, get the flavors and what's the word? Not ferment, but grow to bloom to what it is.
Ripen.
The final outcome. Yeah, ripen. Exactly. It needed to ripen, and now it's like it's prime. At least in my mind.
Do you feel like you had kind of maybe had to live longer? Do you feel like you had to stick around to get those experiences before that could really come to fruition?
Honestly, yes, especially in that song, because I don't call people out by name, but I say, I've heard people close to me, friendships just broke in half. I've done things that I regret, and it's just like, apologies, I'm so sorry. Basically, it's, I had to live. I had to go through a lot of the crappy experiences to make me get to this point in life where I realized, hey, you know what? I just had that young chip on my shoulder. Somebody irritated me at this point, and I was just kind of like, screw you or whatever. And then now here it is, all these years later, you see a different perspective, especially when you're not 22 years old anymore. Like I don't take the risks I used to take because now I'm like, I can break a bone. I don't,
Right.
I'm not going to go crazy on a skateboard, or you know what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden you think different, your life changes and you see things differently. You're not so risk-takey, or like racing cars, like being a teenager, dude. I should be dead so many times from the near wrecks I've had on the highway and stuff. And it's like you can always look at stuff like that. And it's the same thing with music. Like I had to live, and I had to kind of see myself from a different perspective, because I went through a really hard introspection thing for a while where I was like, people are telling you, oh, you're like this, you're like this. And I go, no, that's not me at all. But then when all the noise settles and you sit back and you go, all right, well, instead of crossing these people off and what they're saying, I'm going to listen to what they're saying and really say, okay, well, let me try to step outside of myself and see myself from a third person. I know it sounds really new age to say that, and it's not supposed to, but sometimes if you kind of step back at yourself and look at how you're dealing with a situation or constructive criticism or something, nobody wants to be told what to do. No, you're wrong, whatever. But when you sit back and you go, man, I was wrong. look, oh, wrong, 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 wrong. What the hell was I thinking? Oh my God, I can't believe I said this. This is somebody I know and I care about. Why did I do this? Because I didn't realize at the time the domino effect of me being a prick would have been, or me having an attitude or something. And then, I've had a lot of good friends where over the years they just were like, you know what, dude, I hate to say it, but I'm kind of done with this friendship. Like I feel like I'm not getting anything else out of this, and it's not about getting something out of it, but I think I'm tapping out. And there's been a couple times where, dude, we're talking like 20 years, 18 years, where I'm like, it's irked me, because I've always been like, I don't want to piss people off. I mean, it's different if you're in an argument or something and you're joking or somebody's legitimately going after you. But it was like, man, this was, a handful of people that I really liked and I really loved as friends. And they wanted to have nothing to do with me. And it was like, kind of like, a hammer hitting you upside the head. All of a sudden, one day you were like, boom. And I was like, wow, man, now I see what they were talking about. And then it's like, I need to, see if there's any way to make amends. Is there any way to salvage this? I've reached out to some of those people and even a couple of years ago, and they were like, you know what? We had a good run, but I'm not feeling it. Have a good life, blah, 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 whatever. And it killed me inside because these are people that like I was good friends with. But, I've tried to better myself, learn from my mistakes, and, take all those many life lessons I've learned up until now and put them into practical use,
It's a shock to the system when you experience something like that because, we're all the good guy, right? In our own movie, so to speak.
Exactly.
we're all the main protagonist, like, especially like with me, I put myself out there every week and give my thoughts on things and all that. And everybody hears them, good, bad, ugly, and different.
It's all there.
Yeah, and so even whenever like little stuff like, and don't get me wrong, I've experienced all that stuff too. I've had people that I had massive respect for that wanted not have nothing to do with me. I've had people that or even like lost jobs or friendships where you think everything's going fine, but then you're so blind to the things that you're doing. That you don't see how it's affecting anybody else, and that is such a shock to the system, and it's very profound whenever you come around to it. Because like me personally, I'm so stubborn that I'm never going to see it that way until I see it that way. If that makes sense.
Until it's too late. It's too late usually.
Yep, absolutely.
They say most people will come around. They say, yeah, but by the time you come around, it's too late. And it's crazy.
So I have something. I don't normally do this on a podcast, but I have. I got a message while we were talking just now from Brian Gray from The Blamed.
Is this live right now?
No. He just
okay. He knew I was going to be on.
Yeah, I've been chatting with him for a little bit. We did a episode of discography discussion on The Blamed. 2 weeks ago, I want to say, where we sat down, we talked about every Blamed album, and all that. So, we ended up talking a little bit after that which is always like really kind of scary, right? You're like, oh, did I say something that was, that was whatever. But, he sent me a question that said he wanted to hear about you recording with Jim Chafin and Mike Phillips.
He must be talking about in 2010 when we did the Numb Reborn album, because we did the song Broken, and we basically took our 2000 release Numb and redid it, all reworked and stuff. And there was 2 songs we had Jim play on, and Mike Phillips did the solo on Broken. Mike Phillips is one of those guys that, like, I've always had mega respect for that dude. I know him. I've, been at parties at his house. He even did he has like a Rush cover band. Well, sort of. They played and stuff. So what did I sing? I sang like whatever. I will choose free will. Down, 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 down. I can't even remember the name of the song, but Mike, sitting there with Mike was like, hey, how do you feel about doing a guitar solo? Yeah, sure. He sat down and his practice run throughs. He's like, all right, well, press record, but this is not a keeper. Let me get a vibe for it. He's one of those guys that you watch, and when he goes, oh my God, this is the worst take I've ever had in my life, for me, I'm like, it makes me want to douse my guitar in gas and burn it. Because I'm like, and then even when it came down to the very final one, we had left his house because we recorded at his house. We left his house. We were back in San Jose, and it was like a couple of days later, and he goes, "Oh man, you know what? If you want to just send me that, I don't know if I'm still 100%. I'll just retrack it." And I was like, "Dude, that was amazing!" And it's not even like he took him 40 takes. He did a handful of takes, and by the time, dude, and it was just one of those like, me and Ducci were just sitting there at the time, like, I had to pick my jaw off the floor because it was like, because Jim's been a great friend for many years. I love Jim. I've done tours with him, with Left Out, with The Blamed. The Circle of Dust had played with him in all his incantations of bands. Clank's played with them. So it's like, it's kind of like a coming home in a sense. It was like having two OGs. Because, dude, growing up, I had Crucified posters on my wall. When it got down to the point years later where it was like, oh, yeah, I met Jim and I met Jeff and I met Greg and Mark. And it was kind of like, I don't want to sound cheesy, but like the movie Rockstar when he goes, I grew up with these guys on my wall, and now I'm one of them. It's like that total cheese score, but it was just like that because, Mike's a great dude. He's just one of those guys where, you watch him play and listening to like his solo album, you listen to that stuff, dude, and it makes my head spin because I go, people go, are you a guitarist? I go, no, I try.
I play guitar, but I'm not a guitarist.
Yeah, I play guitar. So are you a guitarist? No, I try to play. But then you have someone like Mike does his thing and Jim, and they're amazing guys, and I'm glad to have the chance to have worked with them in the past. And I'm sure, I'd like to definitely do some more stuff with them in the future if it allows,
For sure.
You probably hear my cat going crazy in the background.
It's fine. my wife was yelling at my kids earlier. It was awesome.
Yeah. Those are special effects. That's Joe.
Yeah, exactly. He's just got a soundboard back there. Well, yeah. And speaking of The Blame too, you did you had a guest appearance on one of their newer songs.
Yes, Pat and I on track 9. It's funny because I don't know what the name of it turned out. Well, I'll rephrase that. When I got the MP3 from him, when he had just got done writing it, it was called track 9. So it's embedded in my head that it's track 9. He's going to want to kill me. I don't remember what the actual name of the song turned into.
Oh, he's going to be listening.
I have it on vinyl. He sent it. And the irony is, I actually have one. That is the first vinyl I've owned in over 30 something years. And I don't have a record player.
Okay. So, we gotta fix that.
Yeah, I know, dude. I'm
dead serious. Like, I'm gonna talk to Joe. We're gonna get something. We're gonna get something for you.
It's funny because Pat always gets new vinyl. He's like, I got Depeche Mode. I got this. He got Life of Agony. Did you get it on vinyl? I'm like, no. I'm like, I don't have a record player. And even Brian said, do you want a vinyl? I said, I don't have a record player. And he's like, you have to rectify that. Next thing you know, Pat calls me up. I got the package from Brian. The vinyl's in there for you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to break my cheap tradition and actually try to find something to listen to vinyl on at some point.
No, I gotta talk to Joe about that because and then we gotta get something together because I've reached the point where I actually can't live without it. And I'm not like one of those guys. I'm not gonna die on that hill and say that it sounds better than a CD or even high quality or lossless MP3 or not lossless MP3 but like lossless WAV files.
It's a different vibe though between vinyl and digital,
dude. Because I pay attention because it's a whole thing. I mean, you take it out, you put it on your platter, put your needle on, you press play, and it's just and you're sitting there looking at the artwork.
It's ceremonious.
Yeah,
almost.
It's like a ritual. Yeah.
Ritual. That's better. Like ritualistic. Because for me too, it's like you put it on. Then for me, it's like I gotta scour the cover. I have these little weird tics where it's like I don't know why, but I always look up what are the publishing company names because especially the members of the band usually have each individual publishing company. So like Soundgarden, Chris Cornell's was like In One Ear and Out Your Mother Music. There's everybody comes up with their little, like mine is Diolosa Worldwide Publishing. Pat's is like, Smoke Dog Music. I've always been kind of fascinated by liner notes, and that's the one thing you lose when everybody's, when they stop with the CDs, and now it's either just MP3 downloads, unless they offer, a PDF, which ironically, that's one of the things I'm looking into doing with our releases from now on, at least with the full length one, because I want to give people a little more artwork. I miss having lyrics. I miss having special thanks. I miss having all that because of the ritual, the ceremony of going through it. And I kind of want to bring that back. But it's true though. It's a different experience when you have vinyl, and just, like I said, especially for me, it was like that ripping open the plastic when you first open the cardboard, that, not to sound all Joe Biden about it, but when you take the sniff of that vinyl, it's like, it's intoxicating,
Yeah. No, it is.
Can't
and
help it.
For reference, the song that you were on was called Never Wanted to Be Alone with You.
That's it. That's it. That's right.
Yep. It's all good.
I appreciate that.
I don't know. Maybe when Joe edits this, he can make it sound like, make it sound better.
Like I'm a little less of an idiot. Yeah, I was a part of this. I have no clue what it's called.
Knowing Joe, he's just going to leave it all in the way it was.
Yeah. He'll just intensify the cat meows and the noises in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll just crank them up a couple of decibels. It'll be fine. But no, I remember thinking that was really cool too. And one of the things, having the opportunity to talk to Luke Easter, I unfortunately couldn't talk to Brian Gray on a podcast because his voice is kind of messed up right now. But he, it's just hearing all of you guys talk about each other, there's just this giant family there that it just never, it's like a secondary family. Like you guys it almost seems like you guys have always been around each other, working with each other, being just like, hey dude, it'd be really cool if you did this,
Yeah, and dude, think about all the shows and tours we've done together in the past, like playing with like Tourniquet and the Blade. And dude, I played with Left Out. I was like filling guitar in the Blade, filling with Left Out. I played with Brian in 6 Feet Deep for a while because Brian was playing bass for 6 Feet Deep, and their guitarist Mike Schaefer couldn't take some time. Something happened in one of the last 2 tours that 6 Feet Deep had before they broke up. They were like, man, we have to cancel this tour, blah, blah, blah. And then I got this phone call from Tom, the drummer, and he's like, hey, dude, so we have these shows booked, and I know Circle of Dust just broke up like 3 months ago. How do you feel about coming to Elyria, Ohio, and rocking out on stage with us? And I was like, what time is my flight leave? Kind of, So especially in that situation, it was like, here I am once again, with Brian Gray. That's why Brian Gray is the Kevin Bacon of music, by the way. It's 6 degrees of Brian Gray.
All right.
Because he is the man. You can bring that up to him and he'll laugh, but it's true. Because I can pretty much track everybody down to Brian Gray. The kicker is the bass player in my church presently is a good friend of mine. He was in Left Out. His name is Brent. He was in Left Out. All these years later, here I am. I was in New York on the East Coast. He's always been out here. All these years later, I see him, before the quarantine, every week. I talk to him, we text frequently and this and that. And it was like, all this came full circle because of friggin' Brian Gray. And I mean that with like the most ultimate of like love and respect. Because Brian was also just here in December too. So I got to see him for the first time in forever. And it was just so awesome. And it was like, music has been such a blessing to me because a big chunk of the people I know and that I talk to and that I'm good friends with and I have just truckloads of memories with over the years are because of music. Shows with Tourniquet, shows with Brian, shows with this Cornerstone, Purple Door Festival, all these things over the years, all the trips. And it's kind of weird. I kind of wish I was better back in the day about having a journal or a diary just so I could, because I feel like I've forgotten more stuff than some people will ever learn in their life. You know what I'm saying? Because after so many years, all the faces kind of bleed into one. The venues, unless there's something that really sticks out, like, a fire or a sound system blowing up or some kind of crazy circumstance, and Brian's been really good about that. Even when he was out here, we were talking and comparing notes. He goes, hey, do you remember when we did that tour with Brian? Do you remember when we did this? Do you remember when we did this? And it was like, dude, my head was spinning. I was like, I totally forgot about this.
Yeah.
And we had so many laughs about it. It was like, and it was great because he was reminding me of things that I forgot because he was seeing it from his perspective. And then I was remembering things he hadn't remembered or wasn't even aware of at the time. So it was really cool to compare notes. You know, dude, my very first flight on a plane was when I was 15 years old and I was in high school and I flew, it was a school trip to England. The second flight I ever took in the United States was because of Brian Gray. I took a flight from New York to California to help produce the Blame album. The 21, their debut album. That was my very first stepping on a plane in the United States to stay in the United States was because of Brian Gray. And the kicker, which he probably does remember, is we did the album. We ended up going to Huntington Beach, and we stayed at it was infamously referred to as the Huntington Beach House. Mark Solomon, Jeff, Jeremy Moffat, all like the who's who of the, early 90s, Christian hardcore and rock and punk rock, basically all posted up in his house. I spent the night there. The next morning, Brian was supposed to take me to the airport for my flight home. That morning was the major earthquake where the highways collapsed.
Oh my goodness.
We were running late. The only reason we even woke up was because the lamp was doing this, the bookcases were shaking, the house was shaking. And then Brian was like, oh my God, I got to get you to the airport. He got me to the airport. I was literally running in the terminal. I got on one of the only 2 flights that got out of that airport totally that day.
You flew out in the middle of an earthquake.
Yeah, on one of the only 2 flights that got out that day, dude. So it was like, once again, it all comes back to Brian Gray. It all comes back to Brian Gray. I love that dude.
That's awesome. That's did you play on that 21 album at all?
I did. There's a hidden bonus track.
Okay.
Where I was just kind of messing around doing like doing like gallops, and then Brian was like, "We should record that." I'm like, "It's nothing. I'm just messing around." He goes, "No, we're gonna record it." So Jim threw some drums, and he goes, "Just growl." I'm like, "I don't have any lyrics." He goes, "Doesn't matter." So I was just like growling for like 2 minutes or something like that. And I think I did, a couple of little notes here and there, but it was just, and that was the first album that I ever really had a hand in, because at that point too, with Circle of Dust, I wasn't on any of the albums or anything. So with Brian, it was like, hey, we're going to have you come out, I'm going to have you do this, and we're going to do this. And then, so now it's like, that's literally the first thing aside from, being in Circle of Dust, it's like my first real accolade was, this is the first album that somebody brought me in from where I lived to where they lived because they valued my opinion or my craft enough, and they believed in me enough and had faith in me that they wanted me to be there when they recorded their album, like helping them out. And I was like, that was huge for me, I was 22 years old, 23 years old, so insane. It's really insane. That's why this all comes back to, all these memories are because of music. Like, dude, the thousands upon thousands of faces between Cornerstones, the regular shows, the festivals, look, Ducci, his real name is Dan Owsley, was a good friend of Brian Gray's. He was the guy who Brian was like, yeah, I'm filling in on guitar for you, but I know this guy, Dan, and he's in high school, but he really wants to play, and he loves Still Suffering. Danny graduated on a Friday, and then Saturday morning, we left for tour.
Oh, my goodness.
So he graduated high school and basically went away for like 3 months. So it was like, and he was one of Brian Gray's friends. So it all friggin' comes back to Brian Gray. All of it.
So this is the big, because I need to run a documentary series on how everything runs back to Brian Gray in some way, shape, or form.
Seriously, it does, because he's, because first of all, you're never going to meet a guy like him. He has a huge heart, very passionate about music, just always with the help calling people, are you okay? All these years, over the years, it's like, even if I don't talk to Brian for a couple of months or something, anytime we talk or whatever, it's like one of those people you pick right up where you left off. And even when he came out here, it was like we got to hang out like a couple of hours one day. So I got to see his mom. I got to see his dad. I got to see his sister. I got to meet his kid, which was trippy because I'm like, dude, it's funny. Your kid is like less than half your age, and he's 2 feet taller than you. Like,
right.
you know, it's like, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, you have a kid, and he's right here, and he's huge. You know, it was like, it was just a trip. It was just very surreal in a way because, you know, and you know what the kicker is? I met Brian Gray when Clayton, his brother, and I drove 8 hours from New York to Pittsburgh to see Mortal.
Okay.
Because Brian was playing guitar. No, Brian was playing bass, and Jeff Ballou from The Crucified was playing guitar. And that was when I first met Brian, and the very first time I met Jeff, because I was like, man, this guy looks familiar. This guy looks familiar. This guy looks familiar. And Brian's like, oh, hi, Brian. He's like, you probably know Jeff from The Crucified. And I was like, what? Like, The Crew? You know, like that was like my, you know, I don't want to say starstruck, but it was just kind of like, at this point, it was like I was just starting to get out and meet people in other bands. And they were like, oh, yeah, I know Circle of Dust. I love this stuff. Oh, hey. So, and all of a sudden, you know, Brian, hey, let me give you a phone number, Clank, man. Stay in touch with me. And, you know, same with Jeff. And then after that, it was like Cornerstones and any festivals or just coming through like Chicago or wherever Brian was. It was like we'd see each other and you just, like I said, you didn't skip a beat. And all of this has been made possible through the joy of what we call music. You know, the bulk of the people on my friends on Facebook and stuff, it's like I have some family. I have, you know, those couple of people from like, you know, elementary school on up, but the big chunk of them are people through my music career over the years. And it's so bizarre. And I've been thinking about that recently because it was like, it's crazy how many people you meet just from music, you know, people going to concerts, you know, you might meet somebody. I met somebody, my ex-wife, Eric, and I were waiting online at NAMM Festival to meet Alice Cooper. We wanted to go and just meet Alice Cooper. We waited like two and a half hours, and then he was stuck in traffic. Turns out we didn't get a chance to see him because we said we weren't going to wait online like 4 hours. The dude that was in front of us, we struck up a conversation with. He was so cool. I'm like, dude, that was in 2011. I still talk to this kid on Facebook. You know, he's involved with some of my favorite TV shows because he now works in Hollywood. So it's like, it's just really kind of surreal because all this because of a mutual love and respect for music of some type, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and that's this podcast isn't about me, but like it's definitely like how I feel a lot of the time is just being able to sit down and have these conversations, and it is all just for the love of music. It's just for like, and of course, you know, me being on the fan, you know, I wasn't out with you guys playing. I wasn't out, you know, like, but it's all of this time later being able to kind of get these stories, get these ideas, you know, and I feel like in a lot of ways I'm chronicling something that wasn't ever really chronicled. Like you said, you guys weren't keeping diaries. You weren't keeping, you know.
And there was no podcast then.
No.
There was none of this then, what you're doing. So now, like you said, you get to, like for you, for us, it's kind of reliving the memories. For you, it's kind of like living through everyone that you interview's memories, especially if it's bands that you like and you had respect for. I'm like, you know, it goes different. It's like, you know, you talk, especially when you talk to somebody for the first time, because it was like, yeah, we talked on Facebook, whatever. And then now it's like, yeah, you're not just like the guy that interviewed me. You're one of my friends. It's like, and it's weird because even in your situation, you go from band to band or artist or whatever. And now it's like after these years of doing what you do, you're like, you look in your contacts in your phone and you go, these aren't just people that I grew up listening to. Like, I can text this guy when I want. I can call this guy and he'd be like, hey, Dan, how you doing, man? Great to hear from you. I haven't talked to you in a while. It's that in itself is kind of surreal too, because it's that whole, you know, you look up to these people, like I said, with like the Crucified and stuff. And then, you know, to play the first time I jumped on stage and it was like, okay, Jim, it was The Blamed was playing at Cornerstone. Brian said, Still Suffering had only been out. Still Suffering hadn't been out. But he had the demo I did for Animosity. And he's like, Jim learned it. I learned it. I think I got it. Show me the song so we can do it in the middle of our set. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, in the middle of the blame set, we're just going to bust out and play a Klank song. And it was like, oh, all right. And then, it's like that inner fanboy in me, too, is kind of like, I got Jim Chapman playing drums. It's like.
Yeah. No, it is. It's literally one of those, like, you look around, like for me, what it is I try to be like super whatever about it. Any conversation with anybody is a conversation with anybody. But like it's whenever I sign off and I send that file to Joe and I'm like, just talk to Klank for 2 hours. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm looking at my Klank albums on my shelf and it's like, it becomes like, it's almost like it doesn't become real to me until I hang up,
Yeah.
And
did this just happen?
yeah, absolutely. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's the weirdest thing, but, and I think with the modern medium and stuff, it's really, I think this stuff has to be chronicled. I think it has to be, really the words escaping
remembered.
me.
It has to be. It has to be remembered down for others to experience.
Exactly. Because like you said early on in this conversation, we're not really sure what the future looks like right now, and so to have these experiences, to have these connections and stuff, I think it's really important. And that's why I take the time out of my week. I'm glad you took the time out of your week. You know what I mean? Just to be able to sit down and have a conversation, because it's one of those, like, I don't care if this podcast gets 1 million downloads. I'm glad that we had this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Especially because it's like a Pandora's box. Even if you have not even a script, but like, let's say a bullet point of what you want to get across, you know how it goes. Sometimes you might get sidetracked, you go off on a tangent, and it might not be exactly what you originally had intended, but that's okay because of everything else that encompasses in that conversation. Sometimes you find out, facts and tidbits you never knew about people before. You go, hey, you know what? I'm glad we didn't. Because, some people are very, well, we need to stick to the format.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's cool, too. But I like a little bit of leeway. I like the, not the typical questions. I like when, it's different. It's because it's refreshing when it's not just the same. Everything serves its purpose. There's some people that are they're just very cut and dry. When did the band start? How old are you? Then that's fine.
Why the name Klank? Yeah. But
when you do another thing like this, and it's like, you're not afraid to veer off topic, or if we end up, completely left of center, it's like, well, hey, you know what? This, we always joke, like Pat and I were like, hey, this wasn't in the fine print. This was an unscheduled stop, but I'm glad we made the stop. I'm glad we came up on this station because, we wouldn't have had all this other stuff.
Absolutely. Well, and there's one thing I do want to bring up. Speaking of documentaries, and you were on a documentary. You were on the Circle of Dust documentary, because how could you not have been? And that was a while back, and I apologize. Me and Joe actually sat up and watched it. I think it was like the night it came out. We got the digital version and watched it, and because we're huge, we were huge Circle of Dust fans. We were huge Klank fans, and all of that. This is a hard question to ask, because I don't want to say anything that's going to be like negative about anybody, but what was it like for you being asked to be on the documentary and the filming and all of that, and your own personal thoughts about the documentary, which you can go into as much detail about as you want or not?
I was reached out to by James at Fixed, and he said, hey dude, he sent a text and said, we're doing a documentary on Circle of Dust. It originally was supposed to be just on Clayton's old production style, like how he did the early stuff. That was what it was just going to be. It was just going to be basically about his production style, because he was very unorthodox. He didn't have any training or whatever. He basically got a bunch of gear and was like, I'm just going to mess with this crap until I think I figure it out, So I was like, yeah, sure. I'll do it. At that point, Clayton and I hadn't really spoken in many years, but he was like, look, he said, Clay asked me to reach out to you and asked if you would be interested in doing this. And I said, you know what? I think it definitely would be very cool, and I love the way it turned out. It was definitely trippy seeing 22-year-old me being interviewed outside. That footage of me being interviewed was outside Nashville State Penitentiary when we were shooting the Telltale Crime video. So it was kind of surreal and trippy because I was like, first I'm like, I don't even remember this. I'm like, oh, look at me. My hair's like just touching my shoulder. And I got like peach fuzz. But it was really cool. And the cool thing about that is I was honored and happy, first of all, just to be asked to be a part of it, because it was an awesome time in my life. It was the beginning, the kickoff of what would be my musical career. It was literally the springboard. You know what I'm saying? And like, look, I got a record deal from Brandon Ebel without him hearing any music. Basically, he heard the song on the original version of Animosity from Demolition.
The super brutal version.
And he was he was already like, he wanted it. Like he was like, hey, so I heard I know Circle of Dust isn't doing anything, and I know you said you were going to work on this like death metal project. Do you have anything you could send me? And I was like, just that one song. And he's like, yeah. I heard the REX sampler, and that's cool. He goes, but do you want to do an album? And I was like, yeah, and it was funny because it kind of also shows how the industry has changed, because back in the day it used to be you invite labels down, you do showcases. If you're lucky, somebody from a label is at a bar or a club and they just happen to stumble across you.
Right, yeah.
And so I basically had a record deal, and the big chunk of it was because of the popularity of Circle of Dust. Because he knew, come hell or high water, even if it didn't sell like Circle of Dust was selling, because Circle of Dust was selling pretty good, he could guarantee there would be some following.
The crossover sale, absolutely,
exactly.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, it worked in its favor, but I loved the Circle of Dust stuff, It was bitter when it ended, only because it was like, in my mind, I was like, this was my ticket, man, that's when I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. That rush, that getting on stage, no smack, no drug or whatever could ever compare to what it's like when you, especially in your 20s, man. It was like, for me, it was crazy. But, and then to be asked to be a part of it was awesome, because James was doing, there's only some of the stuff we talked about ended up in the video.
Sure.
There was probably another hour and a half's worth of stuff that never even made it onto that. So who knows if any of that stuff will pop up down the road. But it was good, because after that, it kind of opened doors for Clay and I to kind of start communicating again, because, we hadn't talked for many years, and this kind of also falls into line with Apologies, with the song.
Sure, yeah.
We, it wasn't the best. It wasn't the most amicable split. I was annoyed. I'm sure he was frustrated with me being pissed off. And, over the years, I was annoyed. I said things, and, that guy's a jerk, whatever, And I had to make it known to him.
Your feelings are hurt. You say things.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. There's a breakup. No breakups are, I don't care how amicable a breakup is. They're never fun. They're never good, And I was bummed. I was hurt. And, I got to the point where I didn't want to talk about Circle of Dust for many years. I sold a lot of my memorabilia and stuff I had. But I also, again, like you said earlier, like growing and making the mistakes and getting later on in life, it was like you start to realize how little some of those battles meant that you put up. Like that saying, pick your battles, is so, dude, when you're young, it doesn't have any concept, because I'll fight everybody. Everything is, it doesn't matter what you told me to shut up. That's it.
Let's go.
Like,
yep.
Exactly. Like, throw down, it's like, it got to the point where, like, I was able to, like, even now, like, every couple of weeks or so, Clay and I text.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you saw, he's doing the 20th anniversary or 25th. I don't know. The debut Circle album, he redid One Enemy.
Yeah,
He reached out to me, dude. At his request, I cut death vocals for a song that was on the debut album because of what I used to do live. I was walking Ellie at the beach one day, and I get this text. Yo, dude, what are you up to? Oh, walking the dog. What's up? Hey, just want to throw something out there, and I want to know if you'd be interested. Basically, he said, I came across all my old gear, and I'm digitizing all the old files. So I can do a remix, remaster, and plus we're going to be ending up putting out remixes. I'll have artists do remixes. Maybe I'll make some stems available to the public because that's something he's been doing.
Yeah.
He said, would you be interested in doing some vocals for this song? He goes, you remember what you did live, right? And I was like, it's been
probably. Yeah.
I was like, so he sent an email with a link, like a YouTube of song from like 1995 in Atlanta. And I was like, oh man, I totally forgot about that. And then he said, I want you, if you don't mind, start here, end by here, give me a couple of different things. This is what I'm looking for, but I want you to do you, and let's see what happens. Hopefully it fits what I want to do, because then I can use it. So I went over 2 or 3 days later, I went to Pat's house, and I think we sent him 10 or 12 different tracks to choose from of doing different variations of that. And then when I texted him like 2 days, I said, hey man, you get a chance to go through that? And he said, oh man, I just started last night. And he was like, some of this stuff is gold, dude. And it was really, really cool, because coming full circle, circle.
No pun intended. Yeah.
No pun intended. And that was the name of the documentary. It was like, doing the documentary helped open the door for us to start communicating again. And then here it is, the 2 years, 3 years later, random text, hey man, happy holiday, happy Christmas, what are you doing? And then when he reached out about this, we went back and forth, and then it was like, hey man, he's like, do you ever come down to LA? I said, sometimes, and he said, well, let me know next time, because he's living in Los Angeles now. He's not in Detroit. He's like, let me know when you come down this way. It's about time we got together again. And so that's huge for us, for me, for him. So it was like, it's been really cool to be like, just like, even like when this whole shelter in place started, he was one of the first people that came to mind, because I know he's got 2 kids now. They're young. I know he's married. I said, hey man, just reaching out. I know a lot of people, this is a new thing for us. So I just wanted to see how you're doing. How's the family? And so we've been keeping tabs on each other, and it's been really awesome, because it's like, I feel good. I have my friend back, I mean,
yeah.
And there's been a lot of speculation. People are like, oh, I saw you did that, because I put it on my Instagram and I put it on the band page. I said, did anybody see this? And when they were like, it was an Instagram post he put up, and it was a screenshot of his files, and then it said Klank vocals. And dude, as soon as he put that up, dude, my inbox and my text messages were like,
kaboom!
Like slot machine in Vegas. People are like, dude, what's going on? Is this a hoax? Is Circle back together? And I was like, whoa, no. I said,
take it back a few notches. Yeah.
I was like, foot off the gas. I said, I was asked to be a part of something. I definitely obliged. And then it was like, are you guys going to play again? Are you this? I go, you know what? I don't know what the future holds. I did make it known to him that should he decide, because, he doesn't really do many live shows. And I know he hasn't done Circle since we all played together. And I told him, I said, hey man, I'll just to let you know, I said, I have a very flexible schedule with my job, and I have ability to go away. I said, in the event you decide you want to do some Circle shows, I said, let me know, because I'm not just interested, I'm very interested, and I would love to. And his reply was, well, my kids are extremely young right now. I really have no plans to do any shows whatsoever in the immediate future, but I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what holds after that. He's like, but I'm definitely going to keep this in mind. And I even had spoke to Jason, because I still talk to Jason, the drummer. He lives in the Carolinas now. So we text, we send, funny memes and stuff. And I hit him up a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I mentioned to Clay that if he ever got a wild hair in his butt and he wanted to go out and do some shows, I said, I'm down. And he goes, why didn't you call me? I'm like, what, would you play? And he's like, dude, he goes, I haven't played since the last time Circle of Dust played. He goes, but I have no problem dusting off my kit and doing what we do. And that made me feel so good inside too, where it was like, you know what? I'm not going to make any predictions, but I've learned at going to be 49 years old this year, I've learned to never say never, because there's a lot of things I swore I would never do that I've done. And now it's the same thing with him. It's like, it would be great, man. I would love to be able to go out and, just because it'd be great. Because, dude, I know my body might ache and I would feel my age, but I would totally feel like I'm in my 20s again, my early 20s, like.
Yeah. I
mean, you back to that point in time, like, dude, the early 90s was magical musically, especially for like, REX music. And when Tooth and Nail came in, there's that whole time that's why so many people, it's very sacred to people, because it's not like it is today. There was so many bands, and Tooth and Nail was exploding, and they had Tooth and Nail Fest and all these festivals, and you could just almost like every weekend you can pick and choose what awesome tour package you wanted to see because somebody was coming around. And over the years, things change. People get older. They have, kids, mortgages and stuff. Bands break up or, go on hiatuses. But it's great because, like you said before, Furnace Fest, you have all these bands that haven't even talked to each other or whatever. And they said, we're going to do this. We'll get back together and we'll do this. So I'm with you on that. Like, I've never been to Furnace Fest, but I've got my fingers crossed, man, because that would be something that, it's for those who weren't, how can I say it? For those who weren't either born in that time frame or old enough to actively get involved with driving 6 or 8 hours to see a show, this is like, it's like the Mecca. It's like we're all driving to this to get another glimpse of what it was like once upon a time in a past day in the heyday of music.
Yeah. I mean, I still do it to this day. I mean, last year I drove 5.5 hours to see Zayo. They were in Indianapolis, and I was like, you know what? I can do it. I can make it.
I can make it.
Yeah, and I went, and it was incredible. And those guys still sound like they did 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, it's just same with Living Sacrifice. I was very disappointed that they had a 30-year anniversary show. It ended up getting canceled, unfortunately. It was going to be amazing. The Blame was going to be there. I remember thinking, like, I'm going to bring my laptop, my microphone. I'm going to do so many interviews. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be incredible. And then, it unfortunately, ended up getting canceled, which, don't get me wrong, that is still the plan when it eventually gets...
and the only plus in that, too, is it came up so quick where it was like, there was so many people that were like, well, the tickets are almost sold out. I can't get the time off from work. This one can't do this. When they just said that we're still looking to do this, it's probably going to be at the same venue unless they can find a place. Dude, if they can find a place a little bigger and the other place will honor the tickets, that would be kind of cool because at that point maybe I can even fly in because I was checking into it, but it was like, man, for me to do this, I'm like, I can do this, but I'm going to put myself in a financial. You know what I'm saying? I'll put myself in the bind to do it, but on one hand, the devil on my shoulder was like, that's rock and roll, man.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those are your boys. And on the other side, it was like, yeah, but you like having a nice credit rating.
Right.
You like not having to be poor and penniless. It was like, know the consequences because if you dig this hole, it's going to take months to get out of. But now that, because all these months go by, let's see where it ends up. Where they end up having it and when, because I know you, myself, there's so many people that were like, oh man, it was 8 hours away or 6 hours away. And it just sucks because now it's not even happening. I'm like, well, in their mind, it is going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. Oh, I'm there. I listen to the devil on my shoulder, like I'm going to be in that mosh pit. If all things work out, you're going to be there too. You're going to hit me, and I'm going to be like, worth it. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be awesome. And
dude, we're going to have to totally look at each other and have that moment where I'm going to look at you and we're going to be like, yeah. You know exactly what I'm talking about. We were talking about this.
Let's do this. Yeah. And
exactly.
That sort of stuff. I mean, 90% of why I do this, what I do is just to feel that feeling of being 20 again. And being, I feel really old even saying that, but like, it's just one of those, like, it's that feeling that like you said, never say never. I would have never imagined that this many years would go by and I'd still be like, oh my God, Living Sacrifice playing a show. How do I get there?
Exactly.
How do I get there? How do I make this happen? And I want to go and and again, I'm a dad. I've got 4 kids. I've got a wife. I've got a mortgage. I have a full-time job. Which I'm very thankful for. I know a lot of people don't have a job right now, but like it's still like very, very surreal. And just the idea that I'm going to get to, through doing this, I'm going to get to actually talk to people that like already actually know who I am. I don't have to do the thing that I did when I was a teenager.
Exactly.
And be all like, oh my God, I love you guys. I think you guys are great. You're the best band in the entire world. Like all that stuff. Fortunately, modern technology has made it to where I don't have to do that anymore. But, like these shows are so important. And like you were saying about the circle shows, like not that they're happening. I mean, we're not trying to convey that they're happening, but if they ever were to happen, I mean, just imagine the impact that would have on the fan base. And I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that Clayton even was like that he resurrected the Circle of Dust IP or so, whatever you want to call it, because it made it very real.
Missed out on that.
Yeah.
The people that never had a chance to experience it. So now it's like everything has come back around where I thought it was cool because especially with the stuff he's doing now, like he's got whatever millions of followers with his Cell Dweller stuff. So it sets a great platform for him where you can resurrect the old discography and the old catalog. And you have people that they might be diehard Cell Dweller fans that never knew of Circle of Dust. They're like, wait, this is what you came from? Because don't forget, when he stopped Circle of Dust, he was more like, it was a bitter thing for him. He was like, I'm done with it. Like he said in the documentary, I burned all my crap in the back in the garbage can. It was like, I'm done. I'm tapping out. I'm done. So here it is now all these years later. It's an avenue where the old school diehard fans, their heads are spinning off their shoulders going, wait a minute, you're doing remixes, remasters, and new music? Like, does not compute. People are like tripping. And then when you have like, the anniversary releases, the new remixes coming up, just
the vinyl releases.
Yeah. Well, from the documentary and stuff, like I said, with the people that were contacting me, it was like, oh my goodness. It was great to see so many people from back then that were a part of it that were still like, man, this stuff, it still brings a tear to my eye. Like, I remember, I've got friends that drove like 8, 10, 12 hours to see Circle shows. And we played in Atlanta. We had two of my friends flew in from New York to Atlanta to be there for what it turned out to be our last big show in Atlanta. So it was like, even for myself, it was like, going through some of these old home movies and memorabilia that I had. It was kind of surreal. And now it's like, man, to see people who, they're only 20 years old. I mean, dude, they weren't even alive when Circle Dust was in its heyday. And now we're like, hey, I saw something on the Circle of Dust. Are you the same guy? Because I have a bunch of mutual friends and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. And they're like, oh dude, Noah, I had no clue. I got the Brainchild album. And, people kind of trip out in it. And it's kind of cool too. Cause I'm like, man, it's great to see 25 years later, a whole new fan base is finding out about what other people have been talking about for 25 years. And now they get to experience it. And it's fresh and it's new for them. It's not like it's not a rehash. You know what I'm saying?
It's not. It's actually ahead of its time. Like that's the thing that get like you listen to a song like Deviate. You tell me that song can't stand toe to toe with a lot of the heavy songs that are out there now.
Exactly.
I mean, especially with how it's been remixed and remastered, and you know what I mean. Like it just booms through the speakers. Yeah. I mean, I nerd out to that song every time it comes on my shuffle because I'm like, I don't care if I'm at work. I'm standing at a desk, fixing a machine, and I'm just like, yes. It's even the same, whenever something like Time comes on, Still Suffering, like those songs that were, because I always joke that like industrial metal, I don't know what it is, like the electronics of it or what it is, but like it still always sounds new. Like it always sounds like something that just came out, that somebody just sat down and was like, I could mix electronic elements with metal and it'd be awesome, and like that stuff still blows my mind even. And this could just be because like I'm old, but like to me it sounds new, it sounds fresh, even all these years later.
And a lot of it too is it shouldn't have worked. When I was telling my friends, I said, yeah, I'm involved with this band called Circle of Dust. And I'll never forget, one of my friends, this guy Mike, was like, what do you mean? You're playing heavy guitars with drum machines? No one's going to listen to that crap. You're wasting your time. He's like, nobody wants that. But Clay had been showing me, like, I had heard of Ministry, but I hadn't really sat and dissected them and really heard anything. Clay was my first experience with that, where he was like, we listened to Ministry, and I used to come to the bookstore where he worked, and he was like, dude, there's this new band that just came out. They're called 9 Inch Nails. I was like, oh, no way. He's like, oh, you gotta listen to this. So we sat at his work, dude, and I was like hyper-focused, like crackhead, like on the stereo listening, and I was like, dude, it changed me. It changed me to the point where it was like, you mean to tell me guitar, bass, drum, and vocal now just doesn't have to be drum, bass, guitar, and vocal and throw in little keyboards? You can put loops, you can put screeches and noises and spoken samples and, slam a car door and play it backwards and affect it. And it's an intro to a song. Dude, it was like, it still blows my head, because I was joking. I would say that's what tainted me musically, because it changed my perspective, because I was like, this was my box, this is how I saw music. But seeing that, and he was like, Clay was like, this is a drop in the bucket. He was showing me Skinny Puppy, and he was showing me all Godflesh and all this stuff.
Oh,
like,
Godflesh. Ooh.
Dude, it was like my neurons were like my head was just spinning. Like I said, it was like, oh my God. And it just showed me a whole new world that I didn't even know existed. And here we are. Look, here we are all these years now having a podcast discussing this, all because of industrial music and what it meant to you, what it meant to me. And here we are all these years later. And it's like, I don't know. It's awesome. I think it's great for myself personally, just to have been a part of what was going on then, to still be alive, to see how bands have evolved since then, and how, like, one guy was asking me questions about, it's like, do you think industrial music will have another big commercial heyday like it did in the 90s, like with Stabbing Westward, 9 Inch Nails and stuff? And I said, I don't know. But if you notice, since then, a lot of modern music has changed. A lot of modern music has a lot of loops, a lot of sequencing. So it's like, it became really popular. It went from the underground clubs where they were doing 12-inch singles and remixes to the mainstream of radio. And then it's like it never went away. All these other bands were like, all of a sudden Seven Dust has programming in it. And these other bands have drum loops. And dude, even in the Christian market, like the DC Talks and those other, there was more, what we like to call window dressing underneath it, more, synthesized and created stuff. And it was like, it's kind of good to see, because it's like, you know what? It's kind of showed the impact it had on music and the evolution of it since then,
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is kind of a funny side story, but on my other podcast, we did a interview with a member of Pitch Shifter, if you remember Pitch Shifter.
J.S. Clayton.
Yeah. And he said, in the interview, he goes, so we were like, what's one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to you, playing live? And he goes, it was probably a club that I was playing. I think he was playing in Great Britain. And they were like, okay, so you're going to show it to us? And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, they were setting up, And he's like, are you going to show it to us? And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, the drum machine. And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, the drum machine. These people actually thought that like the drum machine was like a drum set that had, automatic triggers and stuff on it. And, we got a pretty big laugh out of that, because it's just like, that's the way people viewed it in the 90s, because it was so it was so different. It was so artificial, you know. And I'm sure, you know, at some point, if somebody got Trent Reznor on, he probably has a similar story, you know. Or even Clayton probably. Somebody probably asked him at one point, like, where is the machine? What does it look like?
What makes the noises? What makes the noises, you know? Well, dude, it's funny because Depeche Mode, you know, they when they first started, they played to a drum machine. I don't know if you saw old videos.
Yeah.
They had like basically it looked like a stool with a reel-to-reel player.
Yeah.
And it used to sit in the back, and they used to put 2 lights on it like it was a band member. I mean, that's so cool.
They named it too, didn't they? I can't remember what the name was, but they named it.
Yeah, it's escaping me right now, but yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, and Jeff, the other host of the discography discussion, whenever you said that you guys had the side project that sounded like God Lives Underwater meets Depeche Mode, I guarantee you, even if you guys only ever sell one album of that, it will be to Jeff, because that's like literally his whole deal is he's like every single day, dude. Like last week I think it was today that the episode came out, or maybe yesterday. We were talking about the band Obituary or whatever, and even during the Obituary episode, a band that has nothing to do with any of that stuff, he still brings up Depeche Mode and God Lives Underwater, and you know, I'm like,
that's awesome though.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
God Lives Underwater was one of the most, I think, underrated bands. Pat and I went to see them at this place called Coney Island High in Manhattan. We watched them play. Dude, we saw them play a bunch of times. We saw them play with Stabbing Westward at Webster Hall. But the Coney Island High was, dude, it was small. Maybe like, it fit like maybe 150 people. It was on like a second floor. And it was great. And they did that thing where like, as they played, the music kind of tapered off, and they were like beating on drums and stuff. And one by one, the members would just walk off and strip parts. Like one guy would take a snare, another guy would just walk away with the cymbals, another guy took the kick drum. So the guy was just sitting there like hitting a tom and a cymbal and a snare, and then the snare would disappear. And then we ended up talking to them and helped them. It was funny too, because Pat and I ended up helping them load out that night. So it was just so great. But they're just one of those bands that like, they were at the forefront of that. When they first came out, like when their first album came out, people were like, if you put Alice in Chains and 9 Inch Nails in a blender, you get God Lives Underwater. Because I remember specifically, especially with, you know, David Riley's voice, he had a kind of Lane Staley-ish vibe to it.
Sure, yeah.
But it was like, dude, even that last album, Up Off the Floor, like they were ahead of their time. They should have been mammothly huge, you know, just because of, but the songs, dude, it's so funny because Pat and I will message each other. I said, dude, I broke out Life in the So-Called Space Age today. Oh, no way. I said, dude, I always forget how awesome that album is. I might go through a cycle where I don't listen to it for like 8 months or a year or something. And then all of a sudden, I'll put it on and, dude, I get to that first song and I'm just like, nah, nah, nah. Where you're at, you shouldn't be, although I wish I was too. And it's like, it's weird because it ropes me in, and it like magically takes me away to a different time and place when I remember, you know, the innocence of youth, drag racing and stuff, and listening to this and being like, man, these guys are doing this, and it's just simple loops and just crazy like analog synths, and that was one of the reasons why, like when we first was messing around with the synth pop lullaby stuff, and we were like, we didn't sit down and say we want to sound like this. It was just like, let's just mess with something different and see what comes up. And we were kind of sitting there and like, what does it sound like to you? And we're like, it doesn't sound like God Lives Underwater, but this sounds like something God Lives Underwater would have done.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And it was just kind of cool because it was like, you know what, I'm happy with it. I even showed, you know, I showed Brian some songs when he was here. I showed some of my friends when they come out, and it's like it's cool because it's a departure. And that's what I loved about, you know, God, I can go off for hours. I just,
no,
them
it's
in
cool.
Depeche Mode is just, it's so great to see, you know, especially a band like Depeche Mode that had such a career. They were the beginning of what was considered alternative movement. And it's so funny because what was considered alternative then is now like, it's not alternative. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, something totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, more mainstream and just, you know, Dude, when you saw like the old videos when like Depeche Mode started playing like the Rose Bowl,
Yeah.
you're like, it was almost like a slap in the face, a realization of this band is way bigger than I ever thought.
Yeah, I thought
know
I
what
was
I'm
into
saying?
this cool underground thing, and it's actually humongous. Everybody loves it. Your mom listens to it. Everybody, yeah.
And it was underground, but it just came above ground so fast, and you just didn't know. Like it was like, and you didn't see it as it was happening. It just kind of happened. Like you turn your head one day, and you're like, oh, this band is huge. Like ta-da! Like out of nowhere.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's funny. My God Lives Underwater story is really funny in that. So the first time I met Jeff, right? This is before we did a podcast together, before we were even friends. You know, Jeff worked at a video game store, and I would go in there all the time and buy video games or whatever. And eventually him and I started talking about music and about stuff like that. Cause I'd wear band shirts and stuff in there or whatever. And he's like, you need to check out this band, God Lives Underwater. And I remember like listening to it and being like, well, I listen to stuff like Living Sacrifice, you know, or like, you know, I listen to really heavy stuff, you know, like it was, you know, Morbid Angel or, you know, like that sort of stuff. And he's like, no, but seriously, this band, God Lives Underwater. And every time I would come into the store, there was even a point where I would actually avoid coming into the store when Jeff was there because I knew that he was going to try to sell me on this band, God Lives Underwater. And over and over and over again. And so it was hard to break like my metal mind about it, you know, because it's like, you know, if they're not screaming, I'm not listening. If they're not playing a blast beat, I'm not tapping my feet, you know, that sort of stuff.
It's not heavy enough.
Yeah. It needs to be brutal, you know, all the time. And it was so funny. And then eventually Jeff ended up like one day he just wasn't there anymore. You know, he quit or left or whatever. And then I think it was like 4 years later or 2 years later or something like that, I was down on my luck. I had been let go from my job, and I remember calling the game store owner and being like, hey, can I work a couple hours a week or whatever? And he's like, yeah, absolutely, you know. And so I ended up working at the store, and then Jeff started coming into the store. So it was like the weirdest role reversal, you know, in the entire world. And of course, as soon as he comes into the store, because now it's like worst case scenario. I'm at work and I'm stuck there for 8 hours.
You're trapped.
And this guy comes in and he's like, you need to listen to God Lives Underwater. He's like, pull up your app, you know, pull up whatever it is you listen to music on, pull up YouTube, pull up anything you got to do. I'm going to make you listen to God Lives Underwater right now. And then, you know, and eventually I came around. You know what I mean? It was one of those, like, I don't know if I had a choice in the matter or what it was, but I eventually came around, and him and I started talking about all kinds of music. And I remember when we started the podcast, we had another guy named Josh in there, and he was cool, but he got to a point where he was like, dude, my wife's not going to let me do this every week like you guys do and all that. And I remember being like, who do I know that's just going to shove music down somebody's throat, whether they want it or not?
Yes.
Immediately I called Jeff. I was like, dude, you need to come on. You need to be on the podcast. You need to do all, you know, and, you know, the rest is history or whatever. But like, it's that band it's so funny that we even talk about it, because that band has so much hand in what we do, even though we talk about like so many brutal bands and death metal bands and grindcore and, you know, all that stuff or whatever. It's so funny how it all just comes back to that God Lives Underwater. You know, you need to listen to this. Trust me, it's going to change your life in a way that you're not going to believe. And, I don't know. It's a side story. Joe's more than welcome to cut it out of the podcast if he wants, but like, it's just.
Yeah. Well, dude, I will still say hands down today, their cover of David Bowie's Fame from that 15 Minutes movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard it, dude. It is one of the best covers ever. First of all, it friggin' bumps, and it's God Lives Underwater. It's David Bowie, but when it starts, you know it's God Lives On. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know it's their take on it. And it's one of the best covers ever. And every once in a while I'll pull it up on YouTube, and it's just like, it's one of those ones I have to listen to like 3 or 4 times. I just can't listen. I can't listen to it once, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I'm totally in at this point, and I don't even know why we haven't done an episode on the podcast about God Lives Underwater. It needs to happen.
You should try to get Jeff Turzo, the second guy that was in it, because, you know, David Riley, the singer, died. Complications to hepatitis years ago. But I would try to get Jeff Turzo at some point just to see. And if your friend Jeff is that big of a God Lives Underwater fan, he must already know about Wired All Wrong.
Yeah.
Because that was after, you know, Jeff Turzo did that after God Lives Underwater. He did that with that guy, Matt Mahaffey from Self.
Yeah.
The band called Self. And it was, for me too, that was cool because it was God Lives Underwater-esque.
Yeah.
But with that little bit more of the turntable kind of feel. Like almost, and I don't want to say DJ-ish, but it was, I think, the next progression of the electronics that like Jeff Turzo was into.
It was like less rock, but more club. Like if that's a way to describe it, you know?
Yes.
And yeah, totally cool. Yeah, Jeff has definitely educated me on a lot of that stuff. You know?
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those, like, you want to talk about Napalm Death, you call me, but you want to talk about God Lives Underwater, you call Jeff, you know, like, and
it's so great.
Yeah, it's awesome. I can't wait to text him when we're done talking about it and be all like, dude,
you're never going to guess what came up in conversation today. What?
Right.
God Lives Underwater. What?
I was like, we started talking about Circle of Dust, and then it turned into God Lives Underwater. I can't, you know, and it's fine. I'm going to leave it all in because it's all gold, you know.
Absolutely.
But
sorry, I'm reloading the cat food, so I had to duck out of sight.
No, you're good. You're good, man. You're absolutely good. We are hitting the 2-hour mark though, and I think Joe's going to murder me if I ask him to add another 2-hour podcast.
Yeah, we'll save that for another time.
Absolutely. But so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do like the professional podcaster thing and be all like, Klank, thank you so much for taking out your time. Doesn't mean we have to stop talking, but it's last we have to stop talking on the official record.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to do that now, and then hopefully Joe's going to cut this part of the podcast. If not, he's just going to leave it in because he thinks it's funny. But,
I don't think it's hysterical.
Absolutely. Well, Klank, thank you so much, man, for taking the time out. I really appreciate it. You know, I know we're not all super busy, but we're busy enough to where, you know, I appreciate you take the time out to talk to me, and that we covered a lot of stuff, man. We really went a lot of places, and I love it. Some people might call it disorganized, but I loved it. So
that's my brain. That's disorganized. The short attention span. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on. And I appreciate, and I know my bandmates appreciate what you do for bands like us, what you do for bands like Zayo and all the other bands that you talk to and help get the message about out. Because at the end of the day, it's about the fans and the listeners and the people like yourself that are, you know, movers and shakers in doing interviews and getting people that might not be normally exposed to it, to the different things, which is one of the joys of programs like yours. So, you know, thank you very much for having me and discussing and, you know, and what you do as a member of the Music Journal Society. I dig it and I appreciate it very much. So
I appreciate it. Thank you.